At 10:06 p.m. on June 7, 2021, a phone call reached emergency services in Colleton County, South Carolina. The caller sounded shaken. His name was Alex Murdaugh. He told the dispatcher he had returned home and found his wife and son dead near the dog kennels on his family's property. The location was Moselle, a sprawling 1,700-acre estate surrounded by woods and farmland. For generations, the Murdaugh name had been associated with law, power, and influence in South Carolina. But on this night, one of the state's most respected legal families was facing a tragedy that would soon become one of the most closely followed criminal cases in America. When investigators arrived, they found 52-year-old Maggie Murdaugh and her 22-year-old son, Paul, murdered near the family's dog kennels. Paul had been shot with a shotgun inside the feed room. Maggie had been shot multiple times with a rifle near the kennels. The crime scene immediately raised difficult questions. There were no obvious suspects. No witnesses had seen what happened. No murder weapon was immediately recovered, and the only person who reported discovering the bodies was the victim's husband and father, Alex Murdaugh. At first, investigators saw him as a grieving husband and father who had lost his family. Friends described Alex as devastated. The community gathered around the family. But as detectives began examining the evidence, small details started creating doubts. The timeline of events became one of the most important parts of the investigation. Alex told investigators he had spent much of the evening away from the main house. He said he had taken a nap, visited his mother, and later returned to Moselle. He said he discovered Maggie and Paul after arriving home. But investigators needed to know every minute of that night. Where was Alex? What happened at the kennels? And why would someone murder two members of a powerful legal family? At first, the case appeared to be a mystery without a clear direction, but investigators did not know they were about to uncover a story much larger than a double murder. A story involving money, deception, secret financial crimes, and a family name that had protected its reputation for nearly a century. The Murdaugh family influence in South Carolina was unlike most. For almost 90 years, members of the family had served as elected solicitors, prosecutors, and powerful attorneys in the region. The family law firm represented thousands of clients. Their connections reached deep into the local justice system. Alex Murdaugh had continued that tradition. He was known as a successful attorney who represented victims of serious accidents. To outsiders, he appeared successful. He had a large home, a respected career, a wife, and two sons. But investigators would later discover that Alex had been living with serious financial problems. For years, he had secretly taken money from clients who trusted him. The financial investigation would eventually reveal millions of dollars had disappeared. But on the night of the murders, nobody knew any of this. The focus remained on finding whoever killed Maggie and Paul. Investigators collected evidence. They interviewed family members and friends. They examined phones, vehicles, and electronic records. Then came a discovery that would completely change the direction of the case: a video recorded on Paul's phone. The video was not meant to capture a murder investigation. Paul had simply recorded himself at the dog kennels shortly before he died. But investigators believed something important was captured in the background. A voice that placed Alex Murdaugh at the kennels minutes before the killings. For months, Alex had told investigators he was not near the kennels before discovering the bodies. The video challenged that statement. The evidence became a turning point. The man who had reported finding his wife and son suddenly became the central focus of the investigation. But the questions did not stop there. Why would Alex lie about his location? And what else had he been hiding? As investigators dug deeper, they discovered the murders were connected to a much larger crisis. Alex's financial world was collapsing. Clients who trusted him with settlement money had not received everything they were owed. His law firm was beginning to question missing funds. His reputation was under threat. The powerful attorney who had spent decades inside courtrooms was now facing an investigation of his own. Then another shocking event happened. On September 4th, 2021, Alex reported that he had been shot on the side of a South Carolina road. He survived. At first, investigators believed he had been targeted, but the story quickly became more complicated. Police discovered that Alex had arranged for another man to kill him so his surviving son, Buster, could receive a large insurance payment. The plan failed. The shooting investigation exposed even more details about Alex's financial problems. Now the public was no longer looking at a grieving father. They were looking at a man accused of years of deception. But one question remained. Did financial crimes explain the murders of Maggie and Paul, or was there another motive? In July 2022, Alex Murdaugh was officially charged with the murders of his wife and son. He pleaded not guilty. His defense team argued that investigators had rushed to judgment. They said there was no direct evidence proving Alex killed Maggie and Paul. They questioned the crime scene investigation. They challenged the timeline. They argued that the evidence did not prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution had a different argument. They said Alex was facing financial disaster. They said he killed his wife and son because he believed their deaths would delay the investigations closing in on him. The trial would become one of the most watched criminal trials in America. The courtroom was filled every day. The prosecution brought in forensic experts, digital evidence specialists, law enforcement officers, family members. The defense challenged each witness. The jury listened as both sides presented completely different versions of what happened at Moselle. Then, after weeks of testimony, Alex Murdaugh took the stand in his own defense. He admitted he had lied about being at the kennels. He said he was paranoid because of his drug addiction and financial problems, but he denied murdering his wife and son. The prosecution questioned him about the changing stories. They asked why he lied. They asked why his phone and vehicle data placed him at the center of the investigation. The courtroom watched as the jury considered every piece of evidence. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments began. The prosecution told the jury that the evidence pointed to one person. The defense argued that unanswered questions remained. Then the case went to the jury. The jurors left the courtroom to decide whether Alex Murdaugh was responsible for the deaths of Maggie and Paul. The entire country waited. After less than 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Everyone stood as the judge entered the courtroom. The clerk asked the jury foreperson if a verdict had been reached. The answer was yes. On the charge of murdering Maggie Murdaugh, the jury found Alex Murdaugh guilty. On the charge of murdering Paul Murdaugh, the jury found Alex Murdaugh guilty. The courtroom remained silent as the verdict was read. Judge Clifton Newman later sentenced Alex Murdaugh to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. A family name that had controlled South Carolina courtrooms for generations had reached its final chapter inside one. The case began with a phone call reporting the deaths of a mother and son. It ended with a jury decision that sent their husband and father to prison for life, and the question that shocked the nation was finally answered. The man who said he discovered the crime scene became the man convicted of creating it.